Good morning, everybody. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have on a super awesome guest, Mrs. Heather Grayberg. Heather Grayberg, originally from Southern New Jersey, is an arts executive consultant and director choreographer now residing in Chester County. She is the executive and programming director of the newly founded organization, the Hub for Arts and Culture, based in Chester County, as well as the executive artistic producer of Revival Productions and Chester County School of the Arts located in Coatesville, PA. She has a BM in musical theater from Westminster College of the Arts and a master's degree in arts management and executive leadership from Rider University. Heather has been performing for over 25 years and has been seen on the creative teams throughout the regions as a director choreographer of over 50 productions. She is a proud member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society, a theatrical union. In addition to creating inspiring artistic experiences in both arts, education, and performance, Heather is passionate about arts advocacy and accessibility. Heather, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Corey. Thanks for having me. Just took the ride over here from Coatesville. It's been a while, so yeah, I'm doing well.
So, what was it as a child that really got you, that really threw you into theater?
Oh, this is a great story, actually. So I grew up in a very musical family. My dad is a pastor, and it was very Southern Baptist and hardworking family. And so, they were in a Southern gospel band, and my whole life was those old hymns that very Southern gospel influence. But my brothers, as I was mentioning to you earlier, they're 10 and 13 years older than me. So they were in high school when I was just in kindergarten, basically. And my oldest, actually both of my brothers were in a production of Oklahoma. And my oldest brother, he was a senior at the time. He was Will Parker. And my middle brother, Dan, he was in the show as well. And he was actually playing the fiddle in it. And with the audition process and all that, my mom had gotten the VHS with Gordon McRae and Shirley Jones. And I watched that VHS like it was my job. I was obsessed with it. In fact, I would just carry the VHS around with me. That's how much I loved it. And I still have it in my office today, just sitting up on the side. But one day, my dad took me to go pick up my brothers not early, but just to pick them up. And we were waiting in the auditorium. And I was sitting on the side there or whatever. And my oldest brother wasn't in the title number, "You're Doing Fine, Oklahoma." He wasn't in that. And they're rehearsing that on stage. And I was only 5 years old at the time. And my brother James goes over to me, "Go up on stage, Heather, go do it." And I'll remember it. I just totally remember it. I ran down the aisle and I ran up the steps. And my dad tried to go catch me and he couldn't. And I went up on stage and I started doing all the choreography and the song with all of the teenagers during this rehearsal. And I finished out the whole song or whatever. And then the high school music director, Mrs. Gates, I'll never forget it. She actually pulled me and my mom over to the side later, or maybe we came in like the next rehearsal or something like that. And she's like, "I want you to audition so you can be in the show." And I sang, "I'm just a girl who can't say no," at 5 years old, like one does. And they're like, "Do you want to be in the show?" So they let me be a little flower girl in it. And I got to do a bow at the end with my oldest brother. And it was a whole thing. So to say that I got bit by the bug, it was fierce. I was injected with musical theater at 5 years old. So that's how it all started. And it's, when I say to people, theater and musical theater and the arts is all I've done and I'm quite boring, I truly mean it. From growing up in that Southern gospel environment to starting in theater at 5 years old, I've lived this my whole life.
So, what are some memorable moments that you've had throughout your, school career in regards to theater?
Memorable moments.
Memorable lessons.
Oh,
maybe.
Good or bad? Let's think. One thing that was really cool was that in college, I got the opportunity to intern with Andy Blankenbuehler, who was the choreographer of Hamilton. And so I got to, and Hamilton didn't exist yet.
Right, of course.
It was in the works. But I got to go and observe and work alongside of him when he was working on the Broadway revival of Annie. And so I got to go in for several days and do that. And I'm actually I'm in the background on a documentary that came out on PBS about the making of that production.
That's
Just
cool.
they came in and filmed the day that we were in there in the studio working, and that was really great. And then so that was very memorable. I'm trying to think there. I'm trying to think of like favorite shows I've done. I've actually been trying to think of how many productions I've been in, and I lost count somewhere in the 100.
I'm
So
sure it all blurs together at
it
some
does.
point.
It does blur together at some zone. I have some like hilarious stories. I can't tell you how many times a safety pin has opened on me when I'm getting ready to go into a big dance number. People have forgotten to come on stage. We had the ad lib. I've busted myself in front of 2,000 people, just falling on the ground. I think one of the most memorable things about performing was when I was at Sight and Sound. I was performing until I was 33 weeks pregnant with my oldest daughter. And that was a difficult time for me, but also very rewarding and very special. Yeah. I know you asked that question. I'm going to remember things at 2 o'clock in the morning.
As everybody does.
Yeah, right? That's when my best ideas come.
So when did you start dancing and choreographing?
This is a really great question. So ironically, I wasn't allowed to dance until I think I was 11 years old. And I did shows from the time I was 5. And then, of course, my dad, being a Southern Baptist preacher, was very conservative about what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I remember for kindergarten, we did a trip to the local ballet, like the local dance school did a ballet, and we saw it with Cinderella. And I remember just wanting to take dance so badly, and my mom called and got the information. And my dad said no, because he didn't want me on stage in a leotard. And eventually, years go on, and I'm pressing in more. I wanted to dance. And we had like a family friend that owned a dance studio, and I ended up I really only started dance because I was overweight. And so then I did what any good pastor's daughter does, and I made a career of the thing I wasn't allowed to do. And I think till this day, my dad does have regrets about it, because I think that back then, when he was very early on in his ministry, there was a lot of legalism, and he's completely reverted from a lot of that tremendously. And so yeah, that's how I started dancing. And then there was a mentor, and he's still alive today, a mentor in my life. His name is Walter Webster, and I did a ton of theater growing up with him. And I had teachers give me opportunities to choreograph the school show while I was in school and that kind of thing. But there was one really pivotal moment. I think it was 6th grade going into 7th grade, where I was taking part in a summer theater camp, and he asked me to choreograph like 2 or 3 songs for it was a review style camp. And then also he gave me the song Johnny One Note. And I went home. He gave me the song. I learned it that day. And then I went home that night and I choreographed a whole tap dance routine to it. And I came back, and he didn't let on that he was impressed necessarily that I did that. But then the local paper came and did an interview with him and did like a whole write-up on the camp. And not to brag, but a good portion of that article was about me and how he couldn't believe that I did that in one day. And from there, he went on to give me many more opportunities, and I got to choreograph a lot under his direction. And so honestly, it really, so dancing came from being overweight, and I didn't want to play soccer. I didn't want to do anything like that. And my dad finally seeing that this was my talent, and he felt good under the guidance of the people that I was taking dance with. But then the choreography came out of people simply giving an opportunity to a girl who was probably too young to have the opportunity, but saw something in me. And I feel like that philosophy is something that I'm trying to create in my own realm as a mentor and educator to other people. Just give them the opportunity and see where it lands, and be there to mentor them along the way.
So, what has been one of your most memorable or hardest choreography?
From a practical perspective, I would say one of the hardest things I ever choreographed was Mary Poppins, and that was here at LBC.
Oh, wow, really?
Well, not that it was challenging, like physically, right? Like,
Right, yeah.
but honestly, I also help a lot with the deck moves and doing the scene changes, like when there's a dance in the middle of it,
Mhm.
right? So like there's a whole way that and that show is a beast of a show. And I think, did you work on the stage crew on that one?
No,
No?
I sat and watched.
Very smart of you. So that was very challenging. Another one that was difficult when I did Ruth.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, like not a ton of dancing, but I wanted to give more dancing than it originally had. And also, because I directed and choreographed that one, there was no strong reference for that show. So in many ways, so like we had the DVD from before. I only watched it one time because I kind of wanted to go into the show with like a fresh set of eyes. But I watched it one time for context. But the way it was filmed, it was like constant close-ups. There was hardly ever any like wide shots, so I couldn't even see all the time what was happening on stage. So I kind of had to make that up. But I knew I wanted to dance it heavier than it had been, and I wanted to make it more like technique driven and less like musical staging. So there was that. A show that I also find challenging is anything that has like a dream ballet in it, like Oklahoma or Carousel, for example, because you have Act One and then you have like a 10 to 15 minute ballet right smack dab in the middle of it.
Really?
And Agnes DeMille was the original choreographer of both of those productions, and Oklahoma is what we would consider the first integrated musical. Integrated in that it's really that and Showboat is the first time where the music, the songs are like an extension of the character's psyche, and also the dance is an extension of the character's psyche. So, we have these dream ballets. So not only are we thinking about, okay, what's going to aesthetically look good, but we have to do it justice to the character. And I think that's a question I always ask myself. One of my mantras is you're an actor first. So whether you're singing a song, you're an actor telling the song, and what is the character saying? And if you're dancing, you're still an actor first, and you're conveying a story. So those are a couple ones that are challenging. I get excited by choreography projects that are going to be challenging to me. I love it, and I feel like nowadays I've got enough under my belt that I don't see a challenge and go, oh no. I have a frame of reference to go off of to get the mission accomplished, so to speak.
That's awesome.
Maybe working with youth is my biggest challenge, if I'm being honest.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because I've gotten used to doing things at a really high level, and then I have to scale it back to like box steps and side steps, and I'm like, oh no, like whatever I gave them was just too challenging. So I have to like kind of rewire my brain sometimes, and I find that my sweet spot is like 6th, 7th grade and upward.
That's good.
Yeah, I figured it out.
That's half the battle is figuring a lot of things out.
Oh yeah.
So, as you furthered your career, at some point you decided you wanted to start a company.
Yeah. I truly believe in life that Revival Productions was not a dream of mine. I never wanted to start a company that wasn't like a checkbox for me. It was a calling from God. So the way this all kind of came about was, I really struggled with, let's be real, I'm not very old. Well, to some I might be now, but I've lived a lot of life in what would be a short period of time. And I have a lot of experience for someone my age. And I struggled very much with getting pregnant when I did with my oldest daughter, because my career was really starting to take off as an actress. And I was really just, I was going and performing around the country and doing the thing. And then I was here in Lancaster doing Sight and Sound, and then bam, got pregnant with Eden. And it was like my whole world was shaken. And so, I finished the contract, and it was a really hard transition into motherhood, as it is for most. Mm-hmm. And I just kept praying to God, like, what is the next phase of my life? Because I knew I was, I loved being a mom. I loved my baby, but I'm a worker bee. I'm a leader. I need to feel invigorated in my talents and my gifts. And, I just really was like fervently praying to God every single day. Lord, what is the next step of my life? What do you want for me professionally? And one day, it was weird. I was in the shower of all things, and I just felt I was like, the word revival just like washed all over me. And I'm like, revival, like what is revival? And it was like, this word stuck with me for 2 years, the word revival. Then 2 years later, I have another baby at this point, and I was reading an article that popped up on my social media about the city of Coatesville, which I was living in a township, right? It was still technically Coatesville, but it was a township outside of the city. But I had been very drawn to the city. Anytime I could, I would drive through the city, and the article was talking all about the revitalization efforts and things they were doing to try to bring the city back, because it is very impoverished. It's very depressed. And I had some experience in the past in community revitalization through the arts. So that was something that, I don't know, I know what the arts can do economically for a city. And suddenly I'm starting getting these ideas, and I'm like driving through town, and I'm like, imagine if there was some kind of arts center of some kind, and people could pop across the street, get some lunch or dinner or drink after or whatever it is, and suddenly I felt like the word revival had a purpose. So Revival Productions was created as an economic catalyst for the community. But just like every vision, it's changed, and it's going to change 100 times over. And every day I give it back to God, and I say, and some days, like, we don't know how we're going to make it. It's just, this organization has been thrown every possible challenge you can think of. We're in an economically depressed community. We're in a prominently minority community. There's a lot of oppression there. We are, I'm working basically 8 full-time jobs for this startup, so to speak, at that time. And I do have help, don't get me wrong. But it's still just, it feels like, and then the pandemic.
I was going to say, the whole pandemic happened.
And then we have a board member who did something not fraudulent with, there was a board member who did something illegal, not in our personal realm, and then so we have to navigate that, and it does involve our building. So, it's been completely challenging, but every day I have to give it back to God. I say, God, this is not this is not my company, it's your company. No one owns a nonprofit. At the end of the day, I have nothing to gain from Revival Productions. But I believe the people we impact through the art we create and through the educational opportunities we create, that's the mission work. And Revival's not a Christian institution. I don't want to be a Christian institution. But I've gotten to see souls saved through it, which is really cool. And that's not that's not the thing we're trying to do, but it just through people. Yeah, it just happened, and that's really rewarding. It's amazing.
So what are some of the biggest accomplishments of Revival that you are proud of?
A couple of months ago, we received a grant for $30,000 to start a sliding scale income-driven tuition payment program for our students. So essentially, a family can submit, income verifying documents, and then they get put into our table, and they might get 50% off for an entire year of all of their classes and lessons and things like that. And that is tremendously valuable to me. And because I know just how expensive, I'm a parent too, right? Like I know how expensive the extracurriculars and those things are. People said, oh, those diapers, they're so expensive. No, dance classes, lessons, all those things are expensive. But those are the most valuable things. So that was a tremendous accomplishment. Our partnership with the new company that I'm actually working for, the Hub for Arts and Culture, just having that new connection and those opportunities that are going to come from the Hub. And I didn't found the Hub. I was asked to work for the Hub. So I'm starting to like wean away a little bit from revival is the goal, and focus more in on the hub's mission. But that's a tremendous accomplishment. We have students that are going on to do great things. I think that those would probably be some of the biggest accomplishments, and just I think also being able to do shows that are accessible to the community. Or I think there's no greater joy I get than being someone's first experience at a live theater show. It's like, so it brings me so much joy.
So we mentioned a few of the setbacks. How did you manage those? What are like the pandemic or stuff like that? How did you navigate those?
Yeah, well, I'll let you know when I figure it out. Every day you're filled with challenges, and I have to create boundaries for myself, Heather, the person, to like shut it off and say, even though this company is very much an extension of myself,
This is where I end.
Yeah, this is where I end, and everyone else can wait. It's not a big deal. But no, one thing that we did that I thought was brilliant was, we started working on our current building that we rent. We started negotiations on that before COVID happened. Like there was like whispers of COVID, which sounds like a really bad soap opera. There was like whispers of COVID when we were starting to do the tours and everything. And then we started negotiations on it before the shutdown happened and whatnot. And then in good faith, we went through with the project and we decided to open anyway, which I don't want to say I regret it because there was no other choice, right? Like I still feel like things are more normal now with COVID, now that you don't have to like shut down the entire operation if somebody gets sick and things like that. And that only really went away like 6 or 7 months ago, maybe. But one thing that we did that I thought was so brilliant was that we opened in July of 2020 and we couldn't operate as normal. We couldn't. And it was so sad and it was hard. But we did what we called a, what did we call it? The Fine and Performing Arts cohort. And every day, we hired real certified teachers. Every day, we had students in kindergarten through 10th grade come to our facility, and they got to do their cyber learning. And we had 2 different spaces, one for the lower school, one for the upper school. And these teachers and aides assisted the students with their cyber learning. And then at the end of the day, they got to do different arts classes. And at the end of the year, they did a little show. So we did like yoga, dance, music, acting, and fine art classes with these students. So that not only kept the lights on, but it gave children an opportunity to have some kind of normalcy. And till this day, I'll still have families say, we were just so thankful and appreciative of that opportunity because our kids would have gone crazy. Or we wouldn't have been able to, how would we have navigated work? So that is probably the smartest thing I ever did. And I will say this, it came from my dome piece. And just I didn't steal the idea from anyone. That was my, we sat around the table, myself and my husband and our nanny actually, who's now my best friend in the world. But we were just like, how could we fulfill a need for families right now and also make it work? And then I was like, what about this? Well, what about that? And then like between the 3 of us, we came up with this phenomenal idea. So we navigated COVID in that way. We did a lot of mitigation stuff, as many theaters did. Now, our black box, it has an occupancy of 150 people total, but we don't seat that many. We typically only seat somewhere between 80 to 90 in a show comfortably. So, we created like an outdoor like bar concession area out of an old piano that was left behind and painted the piano.
Right, yeah.
And we did that. We'd have everyone leave at intermission and fumigate the room. And, we just got creatively adaptive. And we mitigated that in that way. What's been hard is that having so the conservatory, which is what we used to call it, now we've separated the company and now it's called Chester County School of the Arts. That started in the middle of COVID, right? So we didn't have like open houses and come check us out and musical, music instrument petting zoos. Like we didn't do any of that kind of stuff because we couldn't. So it feels like we're starting over all the time because we never got that like regular opportunity like other companies might have. But people, especially my dad, likes to say, if you could survive that, you can survive anything. And I'm like, but Dad, I still don't feel like I'm surviving. And, we are still feeling the aftershocks because a typical business will take anywhere from like 2 to 3, maybe sometimes even more, up to 5 years to get into the black financially. And, we're kind of in that zone too, but we did it in the middle of a pandemic. So we don't know what those statistics look like.
Right.
I mean, companies that had been around, theater companies that had been around for 100 years almost, shut down. And
don't exist anymore.
And it's so sad. And, we didn't have like tremendous access to certain forms of funding because prior to opening our facility, Revival operated on a very small level. We did summer camps in the summertime, and then we'd maybe do like 2 or 3 pop-up events throughout the year, but they were very, very small. And, so we didn't have like a tremendous financial history to even get certain loans or grants or things like that. So, we've made it work. There's still challenges every single day. And any nonprofit will probably tell you the challenge is money, always. So donate to nonprofit organizations. We work our tails off to help people. And we're still navigating those things. And, the interesting thing about Revival right now is we're expanding our reach beyond Coatesville. And because there's a demand for us in other places, people want us to come to them. And, we're like, oh, that's not how we pictured it. We pictured it as a brick and mortar right downtown on the main strip. And that was what it was going to be. But just like anything, we just kind of ride the wave and see where it takes us. And sometimes it's just throwing things to the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
No, I completely agree with you. That's what it's like for this podcast, especially because people are like, oh, you should come out to this place. I'm like, but I don't have the infrastructure.
Right. And with having a company or any kind of enterprise, I feel like I'm always in this place of chicken or the egg. Well, we were talking about marketing before, right? All right, so you need to market to get the word out there, but you need to get the money to be able to market. But where does that money come from?
Right, yeah.
But where does it come from? And nonprofits, while we have the opportunity to fundraise, it's hard to get certain grants. Well, grants are actually a very small portion of what nonprofit organizations get. It's usually those sponsorships and like the personal donations mainly, because grants are so hard to get. And we've gotten a good number of them, but they're competitive.
Right.
So, but at the same time, you have to have a history, like a solid 3 to 5 year history at least, to get some of the bigger ones. And, not every foundation or whoever's being the grantor, is going to supplement to you because of this is what we support, and you don't fit it exactly. Or it's very, there's a lot of details that go into all of it. And, but yeah, I'd like every day, again, like where does this stop and where do I start as a person, and creating those boundaries. And let me tell you what, for any business operator out there or owner or whatever you are, therapy is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It is. It's helped me learn that, my identity is not in this company. First of all, my identity is in Christ, but also like who is Heather, the person, and the things. There's so many different attributes about all of us. And sometimes our attributes, depending on how our life conditions are at the time or what we're doing, our attributes can actually become negative if we're abusing them. So,
being a woman.
You don't say.
What are some of the challenges that you've had to face? Any pushback because of that? Or?
Oh my gosh, Corey, do you have all day? I wouldn't. So like, I wouldn't say I'm a feminist, because I feel like the idea of what a feminist isn't. I don't think things are black and white. Maybe I am a little bit, but maybe not everything under that label, so to speak. I have had so many misogynistic comments, and I think it's just condescending nature. And just the way people talk to me versus a male colleague. I'll give you an example. I was early on in starting Revival, and I contacted a local organization that I thought, they're also an artistic organization in town. And I had a venue at the time where I could do some things, and it was like an old middle school. It was dank, let me tell you what. But it was a place, and we did 2 years of summer camps out of there. It was great. You start humbly. We're still in very humble beginnings. Anyway, so I made the connection via email, and I think I mentioned, who I am. I'm this with Revival, and I said, my husband, who's our resident music director, we would love to talk about maybe doing a partnership concert. We can supply artists and dancers, and maybe you can play your band or whatever. So anyway, the guy eventually calls me back. He's an older gentleman. That has nothing to do with it. I don't care how old you are. Like,
right.
Misogyny is not okay. So anyway, he's like, who are you? And, what are you doing? And so I kind of explain to him what I'm saying, what I'm hoping to maybe do together. And he goes, you do understand that these things take time and rehearsal, right? And I'm like, well, I rehearse for a living. So yes, I'm very well aware. He's like, and you do understand these things take money, right? And I was like, yeah, like we plan on paying people. And he's like, well, how do you plan on doing that? I was like, well, we figure out what we're going to do and we go get sponsors to do it, to support us. And then he goes, well, I really want to talk to your husband. Oh, Corey, I was so naive back then. I didn't know how to handle the situation. And now being on the other side of this that was like 4 years ago. I'm such a different woman today than I was even 2 years ago, having gone through the pandemic and this business and everything so far. So I'm like, you want to talk to my husband? He's like, yeah, I just really want to talk to your husband. He's welcome to come to any of my rehearsals. He can do that. So I just I kind of dismissed myself. So that's one example. I really want to talk to your husband. There's sometimes, recently we were working on a deal for a building downtown, and this is with the Hub. And, we were negotiating on this property for a year, and it fell through, not because of us, but because the other person, and the deal was just going to be horrific, and it did not make financial sense. Mind you, I don't think they're doing so hot, to be honest. But he came to me and he was talking to me. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to talk to so-and-so about this, and I need you to be okay with that. I was like, yeah, okay. And he's like, well, you do have a strong, you have a strong personality. And the thing is, if I were a man, I feel that I would be respected by this person. But because I'm not a man, I don't play any harder than he does, And I think there's just I hate I'm just you have so much passion. It's just condescending. It feels like a pat on the head. I could go on. I won't.
Right.
But
instead of ambition, it's more of.
And also, I'm 5'1" barely. And you could throw me across the room, because I used to get thrown across the room as a dancer, right? And I'm tiny, and I'm like a small package, right? And I feel and this man actually said to my boss, "I'm scared of her." Can you believe that, Corey? Well, I took it as a compliment because that's the only way I could get my way with this guy. I'm scared. He's like, I'm scared of her. I don't, and I think that I have that effect on, I think I have that effect on men, to be honest, professionally. Not all of them, though. I think the ones that I want to work with, and let me just say, my boss right now, the founder of the Hub for Arts and Culture, I've known him now for 3 years. He is a theater philanthropist and a financer, and just truly has a heart for empowering lives through the dollars that he has. And he assembles investors to invest in the arts. It's really, cool. Really cool. It's a whole model of how he does it. But he, sought me out 3 years ago, and then we've continued this relationship. And he's in his 70s. He's someone who, the fact that he values me and sees me and wants to develop me, that speaks volumes more so than the guy that, says I have a big personality. I'm a lot to handle, Mm-hmm. I've been called a spitfire. That's not a compliment. I'm just a businesswoman, you know?
Right, yeah.
So, but I get to the point, and now I think back okay, Heather, if I could go back in time and have that conversation where, that guy said, well, I'd really like to talk to your husband, how would I handle that now? I'd probably say, I'm sorry, but, we're going to have to start this conversation over because I'm the executive of this company. And if you want to get to him, you have to get through me first. And, I don't want to do business with people that aren't going to, you don't have to like me. You don't even have to respect me. Just keep your distance and keep your snide comments. Because that's one thing I can't say I won't do it back to somebody because sometimes, I'm human and I err
Right.
and I just don't have respect. I just can't stand misogyny. And I think it's time that I don't want to say we call it out like, whatever, you're a misogynist, but we find tactful ways of stating our place and saying, I'm a professional woman. You're not going to talk to me that way. We're going to look at the black and white facts on paper and go from there. And so to say it's a challenge is an understatement, but I think that God has aligned a lot of amazing women. And I think that's the challenge too, growing up in church. Women should be silent. Like the women should dress a certain way or look a certain way. And,
Don't be a stumbling block.
It'll be a stumbling block. I've even said recently, like on a Facebook post of somebody, I don't even remember what the original, it might have been from my pastor. He posted it. And I can't remember what it was about, but I mentioned on there, I don't feel like I identify with other women at church that often. Not that I don't try to, but I live in a man's world. And I live in a man's position. And there's other women at church that do that too. And I'm not saying that, like, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, I was a stay-at-home mom for a period of my life. And there's things I loved about that, and I miss parts of that. Ultimately, I don't think that's what I thrived in. But I do miss it some days. So I think it's a lot of undoing and realizing, like, what does a godly woman look like? Deborah was fierce, right? And just because we are female doesn't mean that we should be less than. I think it's just that it is every day we're still chipping away at that glass ceiling. And I think that God is equipping a lot of young women right now to do that. But hopefully we can do it in a godly image. That's the other trial about being a strong woman. Everything is so left or right now. If you don't do this and you don't support that and this, that, and the other thing, it gets really fuzzy.
Very hairy, very quickly.
Yeah. So, I can only work on my little corner of the world and hope that I do good for other people, but I won't be disrespected anymore. That's a big thing for me.
Talking about working as a female, you were also pregnant while working. How do you work around that? What were some of the challenges, some of the joys, some of the concerns?
Yeah, well, when I was at Sight and Sound, I performed till I was 33 weeks pregnant, and then the contract ended. And it was hard for me because I really wanted to stay working. I wanted to be in the next show. I wanted to do the next thing. And ultimately, it didn't happen that way. It didn't work out for me. But I believe that it paved a better way for my career. Becoming a mother has made every aspect of my life better. I have more sympathy and empathy for people. I hear them. It's almost a challenge. Like, I used to be like real hard on things, like, and I probably sound that way still, and I probably am, because at some point or another I'm like, get over it. I'm so triggered by everything. I truly understand there's trauma and there's things that are triggering, so to speak. But like, come on, this isn't one of those. Let's figure it out. Anyway, so becoming a mother has impacted my life in every single way. And even professionally, it has made me better, because I feel, this is from someone who's made every single mistake in the book and will continue to make mistakes all the time, because I'm human. But I'm always striving to get better at it, at being a business leader or whatever I'm doing, not even just business leadership, but being someone else's employee. It was hard to navigate, particularly as an actress, because I felt that when I got pregnant with Eden, my career was going to be over. But it was shifting. It was shifted. And I still performed a few years after. Actually, I had Selah, and then 2 months later booked a gig, kicking my head, and I remember like I'm like breast pumping in the dressing room, and everyone else is like, I'm gonna go to the club later, and I'm like wee woo like I did board meetings breastfeeding a baby at the same time. I think for me it's been about bringing my children along for the journey with me too. They say having a baby changes everything. It does in so many ways, but I think that one thing I witnessed growing up is I feel like, because my mom started having kids in the 70s, right? Back then, it's like you stop everything. There weren't as many working mothers back then. I never wanted my children to feel like they're the reason I didn't pursue things professionally. And certainly, like, it has to look a little different than I thought. My life plan turned out very differently than I thought it was going to. But that's why, we should make plans for the future, but also be willing to give into what God wants them to shift into. And we can't just have like the grips of life on this thing. It's okay. There's peace in letting things go. And I'm feeling more and more content with where I am. I've struggled with contentment my whole life. I'm a very type A person. I'm the person that wants all the accolades on the wall. I'm the person that wants the pat on the back that said you did a really great job. And even when I get that, I still don't feel like it's enough. So, that was a big challenge. That's been a big challenge for me. And I will say right now, I'm like in this place of I've been weeding, let God's either weeded things out of my life intentionally or he's made me do the weeding. And when it comes to parenting, again, I want my daughters to see a woman who knew that God had a plan for her and chased after God's plans for her, not just, feeling demised by the things I didn't check off on my personal box. And I've been doing a lot of reading. One thing that I've tried to commit ever since I finished grad school, I really wanted to commit to trying to read at least one book a month. Any book at all.
Really?
Everything from like self-help to like novels to the most random material. Some of it's Christian, some of it's not. Just a little bit of everything. So one book I'm currently reading is Atomic Habits by, I think his name's James Clark. I'm in the middle of it right now. And it's kind of getting you away from the idea of setting goals, but instead like changing your mind frame. It's all about habits, like creating good habits and getting rid of bad habits. And, one thing he says in there is that if you make 1% improvement every day, if you just focus on doing like 1%, then, the way everything compounds, you'd make about 37% improvement in an entire year. That's significant in an entire year.
Yeah.
So, I'm just trying to focus in on improving myself, the person, and especially the mother, so that my girls can see someone who goes after it, so to speak, but does so in the way that God wants them to and not in the way that the world wants them to.
There's a healthy way to do things and an unhealthy way to do things.
Oh my gosh, and I've been very guilty of unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah.
Tremendously. And, I work on it every day. And when you can show me a perfect person beside Jesus, then, maybe I'll quit and give up. But, that's the thing. I'm not looking for people who are perfect ever. I'm looking for people who are just constantly trying to improve.
So how do you deal with those bundles of joy and run a business at the same time?
It is hard. I have a lot of help. I didn't in the beginning. About 3 years ago, my in-laws moved to the area. I give a lot of credit to my father-in-law for me being able to even have a career. So, we moved to Exton originally while I was at Sight and Sound because my husband was working in Philly. And then we moved to Coatesville because it was like right in between Lancaster and Philly, and there was just like a lot of opportunities all around, and I've utilized all of them. It's been amazing. But so my youngest daughter was born in 2017. I was pregnant with her, and I got pregnant with Selah when Eden was 10 months old, which was also surprise, challenging. After about 3 days, I got over it. I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. I guess so. I had a little bitterness, but I got over it. Towards like the end of my pregnancy, my father-in-law decided he was going to retire. And he said to them, and I struggled with my pregnancy with Selah a little bit, physically, and panic attacks and some things like that. And he told his boss, he's like, I'm going to retire in August. I'm going to go down to Pennsylvania and help my daughter-in-law and son a couple days a week. And I'm just going to work from home, those days. And when she needs help, I'll go down so towards the end of my pregnancy there, he helped me. And then he retired and he would come down. So I would, was working at LBC at the time, and I had other things I would do elsewhere. He would come down every Monday night and then leave Thursday morning. So that way I could go to work and not have to pay for a babysitter, because I didn't have any other family nearby at all. And until they sold their house, that was like another year and a half later, they finally sold their house, and then they moved to Cochranville. And then even now, like when we need help, we have him, and then we have a nanny who, like I said, is like my best friend now. She's like also acts like a mother's helper and just helps me with a lot of different things. I have a tremendous support system. And so, it's been a joy, I think, for my in-laws, because my older niece and nephew, they're very present in their lives still, but like they're in Virginia, so they don't get to be there for everything. Whereas with Eden and Selah, they get to be like, they're like the ultimate grandparents. And my father-in-law has helped me tremendously with the business. He was our CFO for a couple of years. And he's like basically the maintenance guy and everybody, he's just there and everything. So you can't parent a child without a village of people. And, you have to kind of, I didn't have that village before. I had people I could ask to babysit and things like that. But now I feel like I've gotten to this place where I've just got a support system around me, and that's tremendously valuable.
So we're kind of running out of time now. So
Okay.
I have some general questions I'd like to ask everybody.
Yeah.
First off, what is worship to you?
I think worship is praise. Like, it's that time where I get to kind of meditate and like empty the junk from my life and just focus on God and the person of Jesus and just give thanks. Like, I'm usually like when I'm, singing and praising and everything, but I'm also kind of thinking about God, thank you for this, thank you for that. Like, we get so caught up in the muck of life and like I don't have this, or I don't have enough money, or, this is my big problem, that we don't stop and just pause and focus on the great things that God's provided to us.
What are some of the mistakes that you have seen made or that you have made yourself in regards to a performer as a business? And how can we prevent those or give advice to prevent those in the future?
I like to say we need to create replaceable jobs with irreplaceable people. So whenever we're creating positions in the workforce, and this can be in volunteerism, this can be in any situation, but when you get somebody who's irreplaceable and who's passionate about their work and about what they do, or the institution or whatever it is, develop that person. Don't undercut them. That's my big thing there.
What are some? I guess that would apply to the next question. Maybe what's the best piece of advice someone has ever given you?
Just do your work. That was I know it sounds so simple. That is the best advice. I got it from my college voice instructor. She was at the Met. She's on the Wall of Fame at the Met. She's phenomenal. Claudia Catania. She said to me, just do your work. And that's the biggest, that's what it is. Just do your work and get it done.
Sometimes the best pieces of advice
are simple little nuggets like that.
So simple.
Yep.
One of mine was just do it.
Just do it. You stole that from Nike.
No, it wasn't from Shia LaBeouf. It wasn't from Nike. It was from my friend. We were just at the Dirty Old Tavern and talking about this concept of a podcast. I was, something I wanted to do.
I think that's a big thing, because everybody's always like, yes, we should make calculated decisions. You don't want to do something super crazy, but like, just go do the thing. I mean, don't dump your entire life savings into it, but
try it.
Just do it. Yeah. Just do it. Gosh, what do you have to lose?
Right. So, what are some of the biggest blocks for you? How do you, being a performer, you've dealt with, like you said, hundreds of performances and everything. I'm sure there's a lot of rejection into that. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? How do you advise others to deal with that?
I think that rejection for me got a little bit easier as I got older, because being on the other side of the table so much, I've realized sometimes like you don't get the thing because of something silly, like, oh, you don't fit the original person's costume, or you're too short next to this person. Things that aren't, you know, you have no
Trivial,
control
yeah.
over necessarily. So, I also like to say that some of the best no's in my life have turned out to be the best yeses. And sometimes, the weeding that I didn't know needed to be done.
What is one of the funniest moments that you can remember from a show?
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think. I know there's a million of them. Oh goodness gracious, Corey, I'm on the spot. Funniest moment from a show. Well, this one's not funny. No, that's really unfortunate, actually.
Go ahead.
Do you want to hear?
Funny or worse? We
Okay,
can do both.
My senior. This isn't funny, but I guess in hindsight, I'm like, oh gosh. In senior year of high school, I got like food poisoning like 15 minutes before I was supposed to go on stage.
Oh no.
And like the little trooper that I am, I was sick or whatever, and I went on stage, and the adrenaline kicked in, and I powered through. That's just a memorable one.
Okay.
That was a very memorable one.
But nothing bad happened, I guess.
Well, I mean, no, I muscled through. Okay. Somehow, it was a miracle. Funny things. Gosh, like I said, it's gonna come to me at 2:00 in the morning.
No problem.
Oh, I lost a tooth when I was a kid. I should say that. I lost a tooth on stage.
How'd that happen?
It came off like right off stage. Well, I was a kid.
Oh, right, gotcha.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't impressive, but I had to go into the next scene with like tissue, so that was kind of cute. Oh, and one time I was in a show and I was doing this dance, and it was like in My Fair Lady, and I was doing these like big high kicks things, and the guy came out and like hit my leg, and I fell right on my booty, right in the middle of it. But it was like, I'm pretty sure, I think he was saying the word rumpus at that same time. Pick up your rumpus, boom, and I fell. It was like you would time it, but it didn't happen that way.
That's funny.
Yeah, lots of little isms. That's the joy of live theater. You truly never know what is going to happen, and I love that.
What do you? Is there any advice for theater people out there into what they should do or how they? Because for theater, it's multifaceted. You can be a performer, you can be a backstage director, you can be all these different things. What's your advice to those who want to be in theater?
Absolutely. Do not lie or overinflate. Do not lie on your resume or overinflate it, because the industry is so small. Like if I see somebody that did a project at such and such theater, I'll contact a colleague or somebody I know from that theater. I get contacted all the time about like, hey, have you worked with so-and-so? What do you think? There's one time I even got a resume that it was a show I directed, but she didn't list me as the director. She listed somebody else. I'm like, you're really going to audition for me and list somebody else as the director on the show that I cast you in? And I don't know that she did it. Sometimes people do it to like diversify so they don't have too much of the same person on there. There's another time I was looking for a production manager for a show that we were traveling, just to kind of coordinate the tour. And he emailed, I didn't end up hiring him in the long run. He emailed me and asked, like, could I be the assistant director on the show? And I was like, well, I don't really think we need one. The director really seems to have a stronghold on what they're going to do. And he's like, well, do you mind if I just put it on my resume? Because it'll look really good. And I just, honestly, this is probably my nivety. I don't remember if I responded back to him or just ghosted him, which was probably not professional of me. But this was like years ago. I was a newbie, right? But I'm like, you're going to really ask me if you can lie on your resume to look better for other people? Why should I believe anything on your resume that you just gave me last week?
Right.
So just don't do it. It's not worth it. We're not looking for people all the time that have the most tremendous resume. Be kind. Be easy to work with. Don't start drama. Be understanding. And at the end of the day, we're not better than anybody else.
Yeah, I was about to say, you can have the best resume in the world, but if you're an awful person to work with...
I don't want to work with you. And, I've sometimes been difficult to work with, and I will admit that. And I've had to change myself a lot. But it doesn't mean that you don't stick to your guns on certain things. But the other thing I've learned, too, is, like, with me, like, leading an organization and, like, actors, don't be a complainer. Like, complaining about every little thing, because you would not survive in like my position, to be honest.
I was about to say, yeah.
It is so, I have so much more respect, and I can go back in time and be like, gosh, Heather, you should have shut up back then, because you don't know the stress that people in the higher positions are under to make it work. Just to get the financing to make a show happen is like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So just be modest, be humble, be kind. Don't lie on your resume. Be easy to work with. But again, that doesn't mean let yourself be abused.
No,
right?
Yeah.
There's a difference.
So last question.
Yeah.
What are you most excited for Revival? What's stuff coming up for you? Where can people find you?
Yeah. I'm most excited for, we've divided the company in two. The conservatory that used to be, a department of Revival Productions is now a separate company. It's a for-profit company now owned by Revival Productions, the nonprofit. And now we have an asset, which is this new company. It's Chester County School of the Arts. We are moving to just outside of the city where we are. And Revival is taking a very short hiatus to kind of figure out what the next step is. But it's likely going to turn into a touring company. Don't know how big the tours are going to go, but that's kind of the direction things are going, because venues, I think for me too, I'm trying to figure out, I'd like to be a nonprofit organization that addresses arts accessibility, but also can chip off that checkbox for other institutions. A lot of organizations don't know how to make the arts accessible because there's a certain dollar amount and this, that, or the other thing. How can Revival partner with existing venues, so to speak, and offer an accessible opportunity for them, but also for their current audience? So I don't know what that looks like. That's why I need to take a hiatus and figure it out. But ultimately, just stabilizing the institution now after COVID and figuring out what's going to be best for our students. And yeah, I think that's what I'm most excited about. I'm ready to get my hands dirty with directing and choreography again. I mean, I'm doing a show right now, but I'm personally ready to do some big shows again.
So what are some, where can people find you? I guess Revival is not doing any shows?
Well, we are doing shows through October, and then we're going to do another concert in December. When we're going to do shows again starting in like late spring of next year. It's just they're not going to look like what they used to look like in our little venue or whatever it is. But there's going to be a wider reach than just Coatesville, which is exciting. So you can find all of our information at www.revival-productions.com. And the school is ccschoolofthearts.com. And we're on social media, Instagram, Facebook, all the things.
All the things. If you have enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share, like, subscribe, share with your friends. I said that twice. Do it.
Just do the work.
Just do the work. If you want to follow us for upcoming episodes, you can follow us. Just search The Story Corey Rosen, CORYROSEN. You can find us anywhere. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the social medias, everything, everywhere, all the time. And if you want to check us out tomorrow, we have a awesome guest, Stephanie Grace. She has performed or opened for Taylor Swift. She's been around the circuit, Nashville. She's from Pottstown, and I'm really excited to talk to her. The day after that, we have our very own Nick DeSanto. He is a local one-man band around the area, which I'm super excited to figure out how the heck he builds his rigs and what does that mean? How hard?
Definitely challenging.
Yeah. I wonder how much back pain he has. But with all that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.